Just 5 days ago, by an 82 to 56 margin, the Maryland House of Delegates voted to ban the death penalty, becoming the 18th state to do so. This is a tremendous political and moral victory for Governor Martin O'Malley, who is a longtime opponent of the death penalty. He says that rather than continuing to throw taxpayers' dollars at an ineffective death penalty, their state has chosen to replace capital punishment with a more effective and cost-efficient public policy, life in prison without parole. We are the first state below the Mason-Dixon line to do so, he continues, but believe that many other states will follow suit. The debate over the death penalty has hung on several major issues, such as it is morally wrong and cruel, it does not deter crime, it is much more expensive than a sentence of life in prison without parole, and that the risk of executing innocent people can never fully be eliminated. By researching these issues and gathering information, I learned that I too am an opponent of the death penalty. All these issues can be supported with reliable evidence that help prove why the death penalty should be abolished. First, 2 wrongs do not make a right. This is something that we've all been taught at some point in our life. Whether this applies to something less important, such as small white lies, or something bigger as capital punishment, it still has the same meaning. Murder should not be punished with murder. Murdering of any kind is morally wrong, and doing it legally constitutes as a cruel and unusual punishment which violates the 8th Amendment of our U.S. Constitution. As Mohammed, a former foreign minister of Algeria, says, experience from all over the world demonstrates that the death penalty is not just cruel, irrevocable, and a violation of the right to life, but it is a toxic and destructive punishment that damages society by causing injustice and suffering. However, supporters of the death penalty argue that if someone commits murder, they should receive death in return. They also argue that executions provide closure to victims' families. However, this is also not true. As warden at San Quentin Prison, Jean Woodford, who has presided over 4 executions, says, it is a natural reaction to want someone dead who has harmed a loved one, but executions cannot and will not provide closure to those families. In fact, Jean has had many people admit, 1 to 2 months after the execution, that they regretted being involved in this process. This is most likely because they realized that even though the murder was legal, it was still morally wrong and cruel, and that life in prison without parole would have been a harsh enough punishment. Second reason the death penalty should not be favored is because it does not deter crime. There is no evidence making it an unnecessary punishment. Advocates say that if states enforce the death penalty, people will be less likely to commit crimes that could or will lead to death. Conversely, evidence shows that states without capital punishment tend to have a lower murder rate than states that do have it. David Garland from the Washington Post shows that in 2010, there were over 14,000 homicides, but only 106 death sentences and even fewer executions. This shows that the chances of any certain killer being caught, convicted, and sentenced to death is extremely small. Then the few offenders that are executed wait on average more than 12 years and some as long as 30. None of this makes for swift or sure deterrence. More evidence that proves that the death penalty does not deter crime comes from an article from Martin O'Malley, the governor of Maryland. He shows that in 2011, the average murder rate in states with the death penalty was 4.9 per 100,000 people, while in states without the death penalty, it was lower, only 4.1 per 100,000 people. He states that effective policing, expanded drug treatment, smarter strategies, and new technology to solve crime and target repeat offenders are the things that work to drive down crime, not the death penalty. Every dollar that is thrown away at maintaining an ineffective death penalty is a dollar we are not investing in strategies that actually work. With this being said, the view that the death penalty deters crime is still a product of belief, not evidence. It is too hard to gather reliable evidence that prove that it truly deters crime because there are too many factors that actually influence the homicide rate. John Donahue from Economics Voice says that even if capital punishment does decrease the murder rate, the decrease is likely small. In light of this evidence, it is clearly not wise to spend millions on a process with no demonstrated value when other proven crime-fighting measures exist. The next reason for opposing the death penalty is that it is very expensive. According to an Indiana study in 2010, capital sentences cost 10 times more than life in prison without parole sentences. They found that the average cost to a county for trial and direct appeal in 6 capital cases averaged $450,000. While in contrast to 7 life in prison without parole cases that average only $43,000. Supporters of the death penalty argue that these numbers are exaggerated and that victims' families do not want to hear about cost or wasting money. They just want justice to be served. However, researcher Susan Brown argues that the impact of the country's deep economic crisis has state leaders questioning the use of taxpayers' money at this flawed system. Finally, the last reason the death penalty should be abolished is because it risks the execution of the innocent. According to Amnesty International, since 1973, over 130 people have been released from death rows throughout the country due to evidence of their wrongful conviction. Also, 2 states, Maine and Rhode Island, have abolished the death penalty because of public shame and remorse after discovering that they've executed innocent men. Advocates do not support executing the innocent, but they believe now is not the time to remove the death penalty because advances in technology will lead to less mistakes. They also argue that we need the death penalty to keep communities safe from repeat offenders. However, legally murdering someone to improve communities cannot be justified if later to find out that person was innocent. Our capital punishment system is unreliable and imposes an irrevocable sentence because once an inmate is executed, nothing can be done to make amends if a mistake has been made. By substituting a sentence of life in prison without parole, we meet society's needs of punishment and protection without the risk of executing innocent people. Overall, not just 18 states, but all 50 states need to ban the death penalty because it does much harm and no good. They all need to follow the footsteps of Governor O'Malley and fight for fair and effective punishment, which proved by evidence is not fulfilled by the death penalty. As O'Malley states, improving public safety is the most fundamental responsibility of our government. The death penalty is expensive, ineffective, morally wrong, and can and does result in the occasional killing of innocent people. Our free and diverse republic was not founded on fear, revenge, or retribution. Freedom, justice, the dignity of every individual, and equal rights before the law are the principles that define our character, and the death penalty is inconsistent with these principles. In order to abolish the death penalty, everyone needs to be thoroughly informed on this topic so that they can take action and make a difference. This was my goal here today. We the people need to stand up for what is right and let the government hear what we have to say. Today there are many ways to get involved, such as campaigns in cities near you, and coalitions that you can join, such as the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. You can find out all the information you need by going online and contacting these groups. If you agree with banning the death penalty, please get involved and make a difference. And remember, an eye for an eye only makes the whole world blind. Thank you.